Friday on the farm is rabbit pie day. So every Friday that ever comes along, I get up early and sing this little song. Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run. Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run. Bang, 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 bang goes the farmer's gun. Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, 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 run. Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run. Don't give the farmer his fun, fun, fun. He'll get by without his rabbit pie. So run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run. Don't give the farmer his fun, fun, fun. He'll get by without his rabbit pie. So run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run.
Good morning. Thank you. That got your attention. Good morning, my name is Julie Duffy, and today, along with Stephen Baggs and his staff, we will assist Ben's family to navigate their way through today's service. On behalf of the family, they would like to thank everybody for travelling to be here and for your support in the past weeks. We acknowledge that Ben's funeral service is live on YouTube, and as such, many people will join us from their own homes across Australia, especially some of his loved family members. Others are also watching in the United Kingdom and across the ditch in New Zealand. We welcome his flying mates and his fellow deer hunters overseas. Before we commence our service to honour this Gippsland legend, we have some housekeeping issues to deal with. I ask at this time that you turn your phones off, not to silent, because they will interfere with the technology. And as we know, Benambra has stretched resources. At the conclusion of the service, we will then travel to the Benambra Cemetery to reunite Ben with his baby son, Lindsay. We are left in no doubt that when we leave here and head to the cemetery, we will have traffic and parking issues. Please consider finding old mate in the crowd out there and car sharing. Should you choose not to travel to the cemetery but rather to stay here and wait for the family's return, the family understand. Following the service at the cemetery, the family have arranged for light refreshments and a cup of tea to be served here at the Recreation Reserve. It is extremely important to Ben's children that today be remembered for a day of laughter and to celebrate a life, a big, huge life that was so well lived and not for any other reason. The locals in Benambra would appreciate that you remember to practice COVID-safe principles. Feel free to wear a face mask at any time if that makes you feel comfortable, and there are sanitiser stations available at your disposal. For anybody that intends camping for the night, I suppose there'll be some of you. The camping spot is out the back behind the tennis courts, and there will be public facilities left open for you. In the past week, I've been stopped numerous times and been asked if I was going to be here today. When I answered yes, it was with some trepidation. As soon as you mentioned Ben Buckley, someone wants to tell you a story. I have lost hours this week. Ben was a man of many talents and had many hats. We do not stand here and pretend that we are going to be able to cover his life journey in a couple of hours. It's hot, we want to be succinct, but we want Ben to be remembered. We're going to give it a real good crack. There are so many Ben stories. His antics and his stories are held by all of you. Every one of you has another story to be told. That's the reason you attend. This afternoon you will mention his name and share his story, and then there will be laughter, and in the future you will hear his name. Ben's name, without a doubt, will be mentioned at the Hinnamungi races next week. There will be talk of the illegal lolly drops in the past years and the petition that you all signed as follows. And when the high-playing cattlemen gather at the Benambra sale yards, his name will be mentioned, possibly for the time that he dropped out of the skies and landed at the front door of the Benambra pub on the road. And at the next council meeting, they might mention his name and recall the time another fellow councillor called him a senile old prick because he stood up for what he believed in. Ben may be gone, but his memories and his shenanigans will be remembered for generations to come. Today's service will concentrate on 4 different areas. There will be a very short eulogy, and then you will discover what part that you shared in Ben's life. Ben's children will then share their time, some of his children, of having Ben as a dad, and then we'll cover his aviation skills and prowess, and last but not least at all, Ben's time serving on council for his community. I was thinking of all the adjectives that I've heard this week to describe this man, and there are so many. Salt of the earth, legendary, a larrikin, a true character, the commander of one-liners, a maverick, patriotic, a man with a heart of gold, and a man of commitment who took a no-bullshit stance to most things in life. And then there's the other side to the Ben coin. He was also described as a pain in the neck, a crusty old fart, a man who loved to poke the possum, and a professional shit stirrer. We could be here for a week. Ben's parents, Jock Buckley and Molly Nee Nash, trained at the Melbourne Bible Institute and would devote many years working as missionaries in the outback of Australia, living with Indigenous families. Ben's older sister Louise was born in far outback Roper at the local police station. A move back to civilisation in Victoria, and their firstborn son John was born. And then, on the 31st of May 1936, at the Hastings Hospital, they welcomed Pierce Edward Buckley, always known as Ben. In the following years, they were joined by Robin, Hugh, Eleanor, and his younger sister Glennie. 7 children in all. Ben's religious upbringing would be his foundation on how he would treat other people. Ben and his siblings attended the Balnarring State School. As a young man, he tried many jobs. His first paid employment was as a swampie working in the timber industry. He then tried his hand as a truck driver, carting wet concrete to build the Weir Wall at Eildon. At 17 years of age, he hitchhiked to Alice Springs and secured a job in the Pico gold mine just out of Tennant Creek. 6 months later, he hitchhiked to Mount Isa and caught a train to Townsville and then a plane north to Cairns to work in a sugar mill as a lumper. This was Ben's first flight. After leaving Queensland, he travelled to Sydney and worked in the ammunition factory. In 1955, Ben sailed to New Zealand on what would be the first of many, many visits. He worked several positions whilst there, eventually being employed as a deer stalker, a hard way to make a living in the high country of the New Zealand Southern Alps. In 4 months, Ben culled 860 red deer and 40 chamois. With £700 in his pocket, Ben enrolled at the Commercial Aviation School in Wanganui. In the late 1960s, on returning to Australia and settling in the Benambra area, Alpine Aviation was formed. It was here that he met and married a local lass by the name of Merle Matthews. They welcomed their firstborn son, Lindsay, who passed away in infancy, followed by Peter, Kim, Sonia and Janelle. It was with sadness that this marriage ended. Ben remarried and welcomed 2 more children to the Buckley family, a son Ryan and then Megan, who completes his family. Ben Buckley passed away at home on the 17th of February 2022. Our first guest speaker for today is well known to most of you, Rowan Tompkins. Rowan will come forward now. Please sit back and get comfortable as Rowan joins us.
Don't touch the mic. Righto. I sort of know how the Pope feels now. Bloody bit of a crowd here. It's good. I'll just relate a couple of stories about Ben. He loved his kids, loved his grandkids, thought the world of them. Although his kids don't always agree with each other, one thing's for sure, they're all Buckleys, that's for bloody sure. So, stubborn buggers, but my old man Reggie and Benny Buckley were good mates, and so hence that Ben spent a lot of time at home, and him and Dad used to sit up at home and have a few beers and giggle like bloody schoolgirls and talk, and they were great mates and for years. And I'd get home from school and I'd say to Mum, "Where's Dad?" And she'd say, "Oh, he's gone for a fly with Ben." Well, when he got home, he never ate his tea, that was for sure. So, but Dad told a funny story about Ben at the Benambra Hotel years ago in the 70s. They were sitting up there having a beer, and there was a new policeman in town, and someone walked into the pub and said to Ben and Dad, "I'll come and meet the new policeman." Ben had a sip out of his beer and said, "I'll meet him soon enough." He was a little bit flamboyant, and I don't know what, it's going to be easy to start the eulogies and start the ball rolling, but where it ends, well, God knows where it ends. This bloke he's still bloody talked about another 200 years, I reckon. But one day I remember distinctly, Peter and I and Ben were coming home from Bensdale, and Ben was driving, he said, "Oh, we might call into the NSA pub for a beer." Now, if you ever went to a pub with Benny Buckley, it was like walking in with a rock star, because every bugger wanted to talk to him and engage him. And he loved a show, he loved to put on a show, and before long, he had people buying him beers. So we call into the NSA pub, and about 4 hours later, Ben says, "Oh, we better get going." And we get out to the car, and Ben says, "Oh, look, I've had a bit too much to drink. One of you blokes can drive." And that's good. That's what you want, to be responsible and safety first and everything. You don't want people drinking and driving on the roads. But the only problem was that Peter and I were only 11 years old at the time. So I don't know who drove to the creek, because neither of us could see over the steering wheel, but I was driving as we came into the Omeo, to the right-hand turn there at the the cemetery there at Omeo, and I was going a bit quick, and I lost control of the car, and we ended up pointing back the way we came. Anyway, Peter, being 11 and a half, he took responsibility for driving us the rest of the way. And about a week later, Ben was up home, and he said to Mum, he was telling Dad about how we had driven him home, and needless to say, the old man wasn't very happy about that at all. He didn't seem to think that was funny. Anyway, and then Ben says, "Oh, and we come around the corner there at the cemetery, and oh yeah, a young bloke lost control of the car, and we spun out." And Dad goes, "Jesus, Ben," he said, "you could all have been bloody killed." And Ben, quick as a flash, looked at him and said, "Well, Reg, look at the good side of it." He said, "We wouldn't have had far to go." Now, later in life, I won't keep you much longer, but later in life, he decided he was going to be a goal umpire. Now, as goal umpires go, Ben Buckley was a bloody good pilot. And he used to stand, that end of the ground wasn't a problem. This end of the ground was a bit more of a problem because just to the left-hand side, Val Pender used to park there. And if Ben stuffed the decision up, she out the car and she up him. She'd let him have it. And you could see his shoulders going and he giggling, and I'm damn sure he used to stuff them up just to get it going. But I remember one day we were playing Bruthen and up here, and a young bloke picked the ball up and he kicked the goal straight over Ben's head, nearly knocked his bloody hat off. And old Ben gives her a point. Well, this kid went off his nut and he's running around, he's going to the umpire, "Do something about that. What did bloody, you can't let him do that." And umpire's going, "It's all right, it's the umpire's decision." He bloody went straight over his head. And Ben's sort of, "Yeah, it's just a point." Anyway, I walked into the sheds 2 hours later and this bloke's got his arm round Ben, bloody shouting him beers, kissing him, cuddling him, reckon he's a hell of a bloke. But that's the sort of bloke Ben was. He could engage at anyone. He was an intelligent man, and he could just engage anybody. And it's it's a loss for the community, and it's it's a big hole to fill. But when you look at it, he was getting on about 85 and. He was running out of gas, and he went out on his terms, and that's probably the way we all want to do it, I suppose. But anyway, I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll miss Benny Buckley. Do we get another Ben Buckley? I think we got Buckley's chance of that. Good on you.
Thank you, Rowan. I know the family appreciate you being here today. Ben Buckley was incredibly proud father to Lindsay, Peter, Kim, Sonia, Janelle, Ryan and Megan, and in time he became a very proud grandfather to 7 grandsons and 3 granddaughters. Peter, his son, will now come forward and share some thoughts of having Ben as a dad. Thank you, Peter.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you very much for coming up here to honour my father in this very sad time, and on behalf of the family, I can't thank you enough. Now, as you know, the old man died in his sleep, and as he would quaintly have put it, he wouldn't have had to go to the residential care home, or as he quaintly put it, the poo painter's palace. Now, I'm just going to ask, I'm going to rattle off a few things here, so just bear with me. And at the end of it, it's a bit of a survey, I suppose, I'm going to do. And at the end of it, I'll ask people to put their hands up so we can get a bit of an idea of the interaction that the old man had with people. So I'll just ask open-ended questions and I'll ask for a show of hands at the end. So who here has been a loader driver for the old man, has written on the wall of his house, has spoken on council matters, has been in the plane with the old man, who has a connection through the Benambra Football Club, or has had a phone call longer than 1 hour with my old man? Put your hands up now. Well, that's just about everyone here, so that's great. Now, in terms of phone calls, I was at the house over there probably about 20 years ago, and I was watching the TV, having a cup of tea or something. The phone rings and the old man picks it up. "Oh, yeah, mate," and he's on about politics and he's on about this and that and the other thing, and he's talking, half an hour goes by. Yeah, righto. He's talking, "Oh, yeah, mate, what about this, what about it?" And yeah, another half an hour, and it's getting about an hour 15, hour 30, and I said, I'm starting to look at him thinking, this is, even for the old man, this is a long call. And I said, yeah, and he eventually, you got to go, mate. He hangs up, and I said, "Who was that?" And he said, "Oh, I think it was Mike." I said, "What do you mean you think it was Mike?" "Oh, I don't know, wrong number." But what I remember about the old man, they say he's a joker and this and that, but as a young fellow, I can remember when the ground was still broken over there when they put the fuel system in, and I remember the hangar still probably had bark on the posts over there. I remember the hangar full of brand new American aeroplanes, and what I remember is a fellow who was 100% on top of his game, and Mick Gribble will attest to that later. And Mick did ask me to tell one story of the old man. As every family does, you have a parachute at the house, and the deal was if you turned up and you wanted to have a go there in the late 70s and the early 80s, you could just chuck it on and have a go. So what happened was the old man, Ross Tompkins, was actually behind this effort, and I drew the short straw, but the old man said, well, I'll go out first. And anyway, he's landed up there and broken his leg as clean as a whistle. And he's on the ground there, and we've gone over, me and Bernie Shaw, and the old man said, the show's got to go on. That's what he was like. The show had to go on. So I had to rip the parachute off him, put it on, jump, and then Ross was the next up or whatever. But by the time we got back, I can remember the old man sitting up in the back of the ambulance, and they've just driven a heap of morphine into him. And he's got this big smile on his face, and he looks at this bloke and he says, "Jam another one in, son." Didn't bother him at all. Now, just the old man being the optimist, always looking on the bright side of things. I'll just tell you one last story. It was in the early 70s there at about 74 or thereabouts. We had a house at Young. And I remember there was a hell of a commotion at the end of the house. And all us kids ran down to see what was going on, and it was Mum tearing strips off the old man, absolutely into him. And we thought, what's this all about? Anyway, well, for the third time that week, Chicken Clopper was asleep on the couch and Nobby McMahon was asleep on the floor next to him. Third time that week, and Mum's just right into him. She says, "Oh, you've got to sort this out. I'm not coping with this anymore. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of you and your drunken mates." And third time this week, Chicken Clopper's been on the couch and bloody Nobby McMahon's on the floor. What are you going to do about it? And the old man scratches his chin, looks up at her and says, "Clearly we need a second couch." Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I think Nobby joins us today. I know he was on his way yesterday anyway. Sky Dog. Amongst the stories that I've heard in the past week in relation to Sky Dog were the controversial and the alleged scrapes with the authorities. There was the time allegedly that Ben landed his plane on the polo pitch at Horsehair Plain while they were playing. Then there were the times that he flew over under more than one bridges between the pylons. The numerous times that the Benambra bomber bombed and swooped the Benambra footy players on this very place that we stand today. And there is a shearing shed in Kilmany that has some tyre skid marks where Ben bounced the plane off the roof of the shearing shed, frightening hell out of the shearers that were crutching inside in the shed. Or he was flying sideways through the poplars because he couldn't drive straight through. A quote from Ben to the flying authorities was, "Around here, we use the rules as a guide, not the gospel." Last week, Ben's son Ryan handed Mick Gribble Ben's flight logbooks and asked him to talk about his dad's time in the skies. It's a very big call, Ryan, and a bigger challenge, Mick. Please come forward, Mick.
You can't possibly hope to even cover a fraction of Benny's adventures, because everyone out here's got one, and they'll They'll always top the story. And what I can say, later on there'll be thousands of them, and it'll go on and on. What I know about Ben, like, he really did love to fly, and he was not bad at it. Without peer, really. His career spanned over 60 years, and he flew.
Can I just interrupt for a second? If there is a doctor or a nurse available here, could I ask you just to go to the rear of the crowd? We have somebody that's very unwell with the heat. So, Megan, I think you should stay there. Is there another doctor or a nurse, please? Thank you.
So Benny flew for over 60 years, and he basically could fly anything that was capable, and some things that weren't. He started in a Tiger Moth in 1957, and 54 years later, he went solo in a helicopter. At 75, a lot of people wouldn't know that. And later on, not long after that, he actually stole it while Parker wasn't looking and flew around and picked up a few of his mates. He really could fly, and he was able to extract the absolute maximum performance from whatever it was he was in, plus a little bit more. He was a hard worker when it came to flying, and as in everything else he did, but from 1958 to 1997, he logged over 24,000 hours. He flew thousands after that. That's when he stopped keeping a logbook. Roughly, I just worked out to be something like 150,000 takeoffs and landings, give or take 10 or 20,000. When he hopped in a plane, it became part of him, an extension of his thoughts. And he had plenty of thoughts. Like Ross mentioned, he is highly intelligent and extremely well read. He never stopped thinking, Ben. And that probably partly explains how he was able to get away with so many remarkable flying feats. People like to paint Ben as a daredevil, but he wasn't at all. He was a very calculating individual, and he had total confidence in his own ability. He was a show-off, but not just any show-off. He was a master showman. Whether it was a nighttime, low-level aerobatic display without runway lights, or flying a dunny seat, he knew his limits. Just no one else did. He really was fearless. He didn't know fear, but he had a great understanding of nature and the elements. He could pick his way through the weather while everyone else was on the ground. He'd find his way to his destination and appear out of the gloom. Got in lots of trouble for doing it too. Ben and Bob Lansbury pioneered aerial firebombing. He was an innovator. Certainly in Victoria they did that, and probably Australia. He paved the way for the future use of planes to control fires, and he was really passionate about this. I can think of one story when things started to get a bit better organised in the fire side of it. They sort of brought in audits, checks, make sure people were complying with their terms of their contracts. And we had a visit from one departmental officer that's probably here today to check Benny's that his plane was up to scratch. One of the things they had to have, and the pilot people here will know, was you had to have a flashing light on your aeroplane. During the inspection, they couldn't find the light. They asked Ben about it. It was a white strobe light you had to have. He reached up into the back of the plane and he produced a little portable one that a camper would use. The officer said, "That's not a 500,000 candle power, Ben." Ben said, "Doesn't run on candles, mate, runs on batteries." We know he didn't like the rules, and he used to quote Winston Churchill. I don't think he was a fan of his either. But I heard Julie say something similar before. Benny's idea was, rules are for the guidance of wise men and the abeyance of fools. He lived to that mantra, that's for sure. He took hundreds of people up for their first flight, and he really wanted to share his thrill of flying. More often than not, his passenger got an even bigger thrill. And there's heaps will tell the stories later on, like I come across them all the time, where they'll tell me where they went up with Ben 30 years ago. He inspired dozens to learn to fly, and many to take it up for a living. He encouraged wannabe ag pilots, and he gave them a go or helped them find a start. I've read through Ben's logbooks, the ones that he kept, and it's made me laugh, it's made me cry. He'd record random events, and not necessarily on the date that they happened in his logbook. You could find something that happened in 1975 written on a page that was dated 1985. A couple of things that I just wanted to share. Back in the 80s, and the flying fraternity will know this, they brought in flight reviews where you had to do a check flight with an instructor to make sure you're still capable. Obviously, Ben didn't think this was really applied to him, and fair enough. So he wrote a little statement, official-looking statement in his logbook. And it says, "I have today given myself a check flight in all normal and emergency procedures, and I've found myself to be quite satisfactory." Then he stamped it Skydog. A few other things. There's a few quotes, and some of these are a bit out of left field, but I'm sure you'll like them. "An ounce of wisdom is worth a ton of knowledge. It's easier to deal with a smart thief than an honest idiot. There's a big difference between helping people and suffering fools gladly. I wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then." And I really like this one. "If you turn the other cheek, you'll get that whack too." He was a great swearer, Benny. Not so much in recent days, but he could swear better than anyone, long before it was fashionable. And he could get away with it in any company. Astonishing fella. And he loved it when things went wrong, because he could fix it. He loved chaos. I'll just finish with this. I remember when he first stood for federal parliament, they had a meet the candidates thing for him down in Yarram. And they put a thing in the paper afterwards with a little photo and a short statement. And Ben said, "I don't care if you're a Mick, a Mason or a black fella, I'll represent you." And he meant it.
Thank you, Mick. I know the family appreciate you taking part in today's service. Does anybody need any water? You okay? All right. Ben lived in an era of photographs and media. There have been books, magazines and television shows made about this man, and on each and every occasion there was a photograph taken. Many of these photos feature Ben, his family, planes and adventures. Please sit back and watch and enjoy the presentation of Ben's life. Thank you.
Bit there and twist it, and then this is how your grandmother used to do the cotton, join cotton together and roll it like that, and then come down with the index finger inside, pull it through, there's your little knot, and you test your knot in this fashion to see that it's strong enough. There you go. If it can stand the rip out of the tag, it's obviously a strong joint.
I was a highwayman, along the coach roads I did ride, with sword and pistol by my side. Many a young maid lost her baubles to my trade. Many a soldier shed his lifeblood on my blade. The bastards hung me in the spring of 25, but I am still alive.
I was a sailor, I was born upon the tide. With the sea I did abide. I sailed a schooner around the Horn of Mexico. I went aloft to furl the mainsail in a blow. And when the yards broke off, they said that I got killed. But I'm living still. I was a dam builder across a river deep and wide, where steel and water did collide. A place called Boulder on the wild Colorado. I slipped and fell into the wet concrete below. They buried me in that great tomb that knows no sound. But I am still around. I'll always be around, around, and around, and around, and around. I'll fly a starship across the universe divide, and when I reach the other side, I'll find a place to rest my spirit if I can. Perhaps I may become a highwayman again, or I may simply be a single drop of rain, but I will remain. I'll be back again and again and again and again and again.
And no one could ever accuse a respectable aviator like Ben Buckley of being daredevil or crazy. He's just a football supporter who likes to give a bit extra to his local team. Ben's sporting gesture is a traditional boost for the boys from Benambra.
Ever since I was a little kid, he's been doing that.
What sort of response does he get?
Oh, people love him. People love him.
Well, he's Benambra. And when we see him flying around, and there he goes, well, we know what he's going to do. The opposition mightn't, but we know, and I mean, that's Benambra. It revs us up and it gives us a hell of a lift out on the footy field.
What, to be covered in super?
Well, I say it makes you grow. Does wonders for you. Does wonders for the grass.
Oh, that doesn't hurt him much. That's only light, fluffy stuff. Shakes them up a bit. Make their hair grow.
They don't look like they're enjoying it that much sometimes.
Oh, they put on a show for you fellas.
But today, they cackle about the time that Ben flew under the Orbost Bridge and the two Irishmen who died from the bridge in horror. But Ben says it's all just a tall tale.
I think they've been on the trumpet lilies. You know, down there in the snowy, they have these little lilies things, and they, if you boil them up or something or eat them, chew them, you suffer from hallucinations. So I think those Irishmen had been on the trumpet lilies.
And they hallucinated a plane going under the bridge as they were standing
there. Yeah,
there.
they must have been. They must have been hallucinating.
Let's don't say goodbye. I hate the way it sounds. So
you don't mind. Let's just say for now, see you when I see you. Another place, some other time. If I ever get down to your way, or you're ever up around mine, we'll laugh about the old days and catch up on the new. Yeah, I'll see you when I see you, and I hope it's someday soon. God made this whole world round, and maybe it's that way. So the path we go down, yeah, I will cross again someday, and someday I'll see you when I see you. Another place, some other time. If I ever get down to your way, or you're ever up around mine, we'll laugh about the old days and catch up on the new. Yeah, I'll see you when I see you, and I hope it's someday real soon. I hope it's someday soon. I'll see you when I see you. Another place, some other time. If I ever get there.
He's a ripper.
A ripper.
Yeah. He'd have a job to find a better one, I think.
Athol Clark is one of hundreds of farmers who marvel at Ben's skill as an agricultural spreader.
It's just as likely to fly through between your television antenna and your chimney as he goes over the house sometimes.
Even Ben makes mistakes. Once he crashed into the side of Mount Borbor. He climbed out and walked 10 kilometres to find help.
Yeah, run into a mountain. What happened? Finished up with a mouthful of gum leaves and snow, mate. A long walk home.
Well, Ben Buckley has now been grounded permanently. The Department of Aviation has taken away Ben's pilot's licence, largely as a result of what you've seen on that film. But they haven't charged him with anything. They have just used special powers to ground him, and he has no say at all. Ben reckons he's been denied natural justice, and the local people agree.
Ben Buckley is not your average pilot. If you think you can spot a certain sprightliness in some of those turns, you're right. He's just got his commercial pilot's licence back after 3 years suspension by aviation authorities. And about the only things that surpass Ben's reputation as a flyer are his legendary battles with bureaucrats.
When you get bureaucrats making laws, bypassing the parliamentary system, and having regulations like these aviation regulations here, where they can, even if they think that you might be going to do something wrong, they can deprive you of your livelihood arbitrarily. That's a blatant denial of natural justice.
Yes, I understand that every life must end. As we settle on, I know someday we must go
Oh, I'm a lucky man to count on both hands the ones I love.
Some folks just have one, you know, others they've got none. Oh. Stay with me, oh, let's just breathe. Practiced are my sins, never gonna let me win.
Under everything, just another human being.
Yeah, I don't wanna hurt her. There's so much in this world to make me believe. Stay with me, you're all I see.
Did I say that I need you? Did I say that I want you? Oh, if I didn't, I'm a fool, you see. No one knows this more than me. And I come clean.
I wonder every day as I look upon your face.
Everything you gave and nothing you would take on.
Nothing you would take.
Everything you gave. Did I say that I need you? Oh, did I say that I want you? Or if I didn't, I'm a fool, you see. No one knows this more than me. As I come.
You like to live dangerous, you know. You understand the value of being alive if you live dangerous.
He'll go where other pilots wouldn't dare go. He's fearless.
What sort of bloke is he, your dad?
To be honest?
Yeah.
He's a crazy old bastard.
So exactly how many crashes have you had?
Oh, a couple of real good ones, a couple of totals, yeah.
It is the most dangerous form of flying there is. For the record, we didn't ask Ben to fly under these power lines, he just did it.
He saved a few lives in his time, being able to get out when others wouldn't have been able to.
Oh, I shot myself with a shotgun, blew a hole through myself.
Renowned high country horseman Ken Conley is one of a number of people who wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Ben.
He talked the air ambulance into coming and landing on a property that I own there, actually now. And if it hadn't been for Ben's reputation, no way known would they have came.
But it's Ben's antics he'd rather talk about.
When I used to train my horses for these bush races and that, and I used to train up along the hills there, and he'd come in behind me and you wouldn't hear him coming. Next thing, over the top, well, I get a bit more out of my horse anyway.
Something of a struggle for the 63-year-old aviator. Worth it to become the first microlight across the Tasman.
This is the sort of caper you only need to do it once. A bit like Charles Lindbergh. I know how he felt now.
A small crowd to help celebrate.
The same as collecting the tea bags for this. And I'm just working out the how many tea bags in the... I've got so far platted together, and it's 270,000 or something as the latest count.
But through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up and spit it out. I faced it all, and I stood tall and did it my way. I've loved, I've laughed and cried, I've had my fill, my share of losing, and now
As tears subside, I find it all so amusing to think I did all that, and may I say, not in a shy way, oh no, not me. I did it my way. For what is a man? What has he got? If not himself, then he has not to say the things he truly feels, and not the words of one who kneels. The record shows I took the blows and did it my it was my way.
The tea bag rope that featured during Ben's films are actually the handles on his coffin today. So let's hope that they are unbreakable, as they will be supporting Ben as he makes his way today. I now invite Kim Yarwood to come forward and share a reading that she's chosen for today for her dad. Good girl, Kim.
Right. Well, look at all the people Dad's touched, and he loved you all. Just want to thank my Yarwood family coming up here today from COVID. I haven't seen them, and this is my daughter Bianca. Okay, this is Dad's favourite poem. It belonged to Mum, and I read it at Mum's funeral, and I'll read it for you here now. I hope you take, if anything from this poem, even a little bit of it, just remember it and pass it on, and try one of these things. Promise yourself to be so strong that nothing can disturb your peace of mind. To talk health, happiness and prosperity to every person you meet. To make all your friends feel that there is something in them. To look at the sunny side of everything and make your optimism come true. To think only of the best, to work only for the best, and to expect only the best. To be just as enthusiastic about your success of others as you are about your own. To forget the mistakes of the past and press on to the greater achievements of the future. To wear a cheerful constitution at all times and give every living creature you meet a smile. To give so much time to the improvement of yourself that you have not time to criticise others. To be too large for worry, too noble for anger, too strong for fear, and too happy to permit the presence of trouble. Okay, and I've just got something Dad wanted me to write down once. I think it's a bit of plagiarism. But he said, write this down, Kimber. I have lived free in a world where freedom is rare. I have pursued work I have loved. I have learnt much, and I have good friends and perilous adventures. What man that lives 3 times my span can say as much? So thank you. Good girl. Good girl.
2 more guest speakers. In 1984, Ben Buckley ran for federal parliament. You probably need to let that sink in a little bit. Can you imagine Ben on the loose in Canberra? It's scary. That experience gave him a taste for an election campaign. In one interview, Ben described himself as a servant to the people. He was elected to speak on their behalf, and he did so fearlessly. Another local councillor was Natalie O'Connell, and she'll now come forward and talk of Ben's time on council. Thank you, Natalie.
Ben's political career is widely known and celebrated, and it's hard to do it justice in such a short speech. I was honoured to be asked to speak to you all today and give an overview of Ben's long and colourful political career, as well as share some personal anecdotes from my time on council with Ben from 2016 to 2020. Ben first stood for local government in 1980 for the Shire of Omeo. He was elected Shire President for the year between 1986 and 1987. He stood down in 1994 as a member of the last council of the Shire of Omeo. He was awarded a certificate for outstanding service by the Victorian Government, which was signed by the State Governor, Premier and Minister for Local Government. In the book Buckley's Chance, Ben cites saving the historical Hinnamungy Bridge from demolition as one of his proudest achievements during his time on the Omeo Shire. Post-1994, council amalgamations occurred and the Omeo Shire became part of the newly formed East Gippsland Shire. Ben had almost a decade away from local government before standing for the East Gippsland Shire in 2003. He served 4 terms before deciding not to recontest at the end of the 2020 council term. During this time, Ben also stood for many federal and state elections. In 2015, many of you will remember that Ben gave the details of the cost of a conflict management program which was used to help resolve internal fighting. This was paid for by the East Gippsland Shire. The information was deemed confidential, but Ben felt the public should know what the Shire was spending their money on. As such, Ben was found guilty of serious misconduct, and he was suspended for a month in 2017, but he appealed the decision and was reinstated while we were waiting for the decision. VCAT then upheld the decision, and Ben was suspended for a further 3 months between August and November 2018, or as he referred to it, in the sin bin. On a Tuesday at our council briefings, Ben would come into the chamber more often than not wearing his red woolen Benambra Bloods jumper. "How's it going, Ben?" I'd ask. "Oh, satisfactory," he'd always reply. He would then don his Netball Victoria visor in the chamber because the LED lighting was too bright. He had his little black diary which he kept in his top pocket with all his reminders, appointments and any citizen requests that he needed to represent. There was no laptop for Ben. He'd make sure that anyone who had a cup of tea would keep the tea bag strings during the day, and then over night time make sure the beer bottle tops were kept as well. He would make sure none of the leftover food went to waste, packaging it up and taking it home after the briefings. The signing of the Code of Conduct was always a point of contention for Ben, as was the budget. Ben would generally vote against the adoption of the budget and rates each year and was determined to remove the municipal charge. In the aftermath of the bushfires, all the roads were closed and zooming in was still a new thing. So Ben would come to my house to zoom into our councillor briefings. I'd cook him a toasted ham and cheese sandwich and have a pack of Tim Tams at the ready. Later on in the last year of council, at times Ben was really quite sick, but he always managed to dial in to at least part of the briefing, sometimes while he was still in bed. Such was his commitment to his councillor duties. Ben had an amazing memory and would recall stories from his various times over the time in local government. Many times during our 4-year term, I would take Ben down on a Tuesday and he had a way of telling me all the stories and I learnt a lot and I laughed a lot. He had names and nicknames for everything and everyone. His old white falcon, fondly known as Cricket. Ben would say to me, "Do you mind if I park Cricket in your yard for a couple of days?" And then a few weeks later he'd pick it up. Our current mayor and former councillor colleague of both myself and Ben was affectionately known, and perhaps a little cheekily known by Ben, as 3 schools. A nod to the fact that Mark was the principal of the 3 leadership schools, and having recently added another one to the belt, I guess he'd be now known as 4 schools. Chrome Dome and the Leper are just a couple of other Ben's famous nicknames that councillors and officers will remember. While Ben and I did not always sit on the same side of the table, once a decision was made, it was straight back to having a laugh, and there were never any hard feelings. He was always willing to listen to anyone and everyone, whatever their issue may be. Always sticking up for the battler, he had time for everyone. He was a great listener. In Ben's last term from 2016 to 2020, he was voted in as the most popular councillor by far, almost 9% of the total ballot, a testament to his popularity and standing amongst the East Gippsland community. In his last year as councillor, Ben was unanimously elected the Deputy Mayor at aged 83, and as the Deputy Mayor in that year, he chaired the council meeting in Cairn River, which was the only time a meeting was ever held in Cairn River. which was a fitting way to finish his political career. At the end of his time on local government, he was known as one of the oldest and longest serving councillors across Victoria. And he was awarded 25 years of service from the Municipal Association of Victoria in 2017. What I will remember most about Ben is his personality. He was a lovable character, thoughtful and kind, and he always offered me very genuine and caring advice, particularly during my term as mayor. Don't take things too personally, don't take it too seriously, he would say. We saw each other every Tuesday for 4 years and during the footy season on a Thursday night at training and then on the Saturday at the game. And we would always have a chuckle about the things that had happened during the week in council. I underestimated the time, emotional and mental workload that of a councillor carries, and I only did it for 4 years. Ben did it for nearly 30, nearly a third of his life. An amazing achievement and an incredible service to his community. Ben, you will be fondly remembered and sadly missed, but your stories and legend will live on. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. I now invite Ben's daughter Sonia to come forward and share some of her thoughts of her time with Dad. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I know it's hot, and if you need to go and get under the shelter, I won't be offended if you walk away from the crowd, and neither would Dad. He liked to sun himself, but it's a cracking day today. So we'll try and get on with this, and I'm the last speaker. So today we lay to rest an Australian icon. The day is not long enough to tell all the stories, but of the rich tapestry of our father's life. He's been described as an extraordinary and very talented man, a larrikin, a nonconformist, colourful character, and a legend in his lifetime. But to us, he was our dad and Poppy Buckley. All his children, grandchildren and many others can relay their joy at the exciting aerobatic plane rides. Dad made his mark all over Australia and the world. Dad had strong friendships and many are here today. Our family thank you for coming, some from great distances, to share our sad day and the celebration of his life. One of the most important relationships for Dad was with my mother, Mel Matthews. Throughout her life, she cared for Dad. Mum worked at the Omeo Telephone Exchange where Dad placed a call to Noel Braid, who became his business partner, and they created Alpine Aviation. Merle's velvet voice captured his attention, and he claimed from that moment when he heard her speak, she was the woman for him. He adored his mountain bride, and they prospered and were blessed with 5 children. He forged true friendships with her family and all the locals of Benambra. Ben and Merle parted ways in the mid-70s. Following this, our lives were enriched with a patchwork family. My father believed he hit the jackpot, inheriting some extra children from the new arrangements. He loved and took on Andrew, Kylie and Cara as his own. Dad referred to their father, Bruce Towner, affectionately as his husband-in-law. To follow was my suite, as he referred to Robin and their children, Ryan and Megan, and our families would spend the odd Christmases all together. After many years and the ending of Dad and Mum's second marriages, my parents reunited. Dad stayed by my mother's side until she passed. They shared together a true love story, with just a few humpdinks and the odd barrel roll. My first of many plane flights was coming home from the hospital as a babe to Benambra, just a few days old in what then was a modern Piper Cherokee. Dad was a true sky grinder with a work ethic that perhaps was only equalled by Gil Parker. As a young kid, I was taken to fly-ins and air shows, as were my other siblings, but I would ride shotgun. We would fly between trees under power lines, knock over 44s with hoppers full of water, and tagged along when we went to pick up the odd stray crayfish. As I grew older, I learned the calluses of the shovel, and often Dad would throw me in the hopper so that I could keep the super heap tidy and loader driver happy. I went on to bargain as a part-time loader driver that every 20-tonne would earn me a day of borrowing Dad's Subaru ute so that I could go off on my own adventures. We once pretended to be fighter pilots while skimming down the Midda River, coming upon unsuspecting rafters. We scud run across Lake Omeo, touching the wheels on the water to impress a busload of tourists. He even took me on the odd FOSCHEC firebombing expedition, which was as rough as it gets, but certainly no kids would get away with doing that these days. The annual Pops Parachuting Championships was held at the hangar, and hundreds of jumps would be made as well as lots of hangovers created. And Bernie Shaw was a reoccurring character in our lives at this event. Yet Andy Skeeve's Skybolt was perhaps the only time I ever felt terrified doing aerobatics. Even Dad in the darkness of night doing barrel rolls when you could see flames coming out of the engine couldn't compare to the feeling of an outwards upside down loop. So there are many talented pilots here today, and we thank you for using your wings to get here in honouring our Dad. Nature, as you know, is challenging for bold pilots, flying through thunderstorms and hard-to-get places, in foggy, misty mountains, praying the rivers will guide you home. Dad and I saw stallions on rock faces of Mount Tambo, wild mobs of brumbies that even the great Ken Conley couldn't rope, running through steep terrain. The wild country captured us, all with absolute fascination. It gave us a unique perspective, yet this was just one facet of our lives together. The rich stories he shared of his history, his life, our heritage, our people and politics will hold me and those who listened in good stead into the future. He gave me a foundation of character, steadfast and resolute. We would always count on our Dad when we needed him the most, and that, above all, is what mattered. Upon my return from travel, I came home to Benambra to care for my father's health 5 years ago, and he responded well to his cancer treatment. He was partial to my home-cooked meals, and we created memories in the final chapter of my life with him. For that, I'm incredibly grateful. And the downturn in his health came from an unfortunate negative reaction to the AstraZeneca vaccination. However, regardless of his failing health, he kept us entertained. He was upbeat with his tea bag rope and bottle tops, and he was so grateful to everyone who collected them for him. He flew his planes right up until he passed away, and at 85, that was an incredible achievement. I'm almost done. Dad was pleased to see his beloved Fountain of Youth gold mining water race that he spent years working on, and recently it's been returned to its former glory. It is situated on the family farm on the Middle River where my cattle now graze, and it's where the hut of the bushranger Jimmy Lee resides, to which Max Dyer wrote an incredible book about, and it's certainly worth a read. Dad camped down with us there a lot towards the end, and it was one of his favourite places. He forged a special mateship with Shooter Mick, who's a great marksman and a crack deer hunter. They had that title in common, and Mick would cook cracking campfire meals and they would drink their fair share of beer, telling yarns into the night. Mr. Barry Pendergast, affectionately known as Uncle Brushy, a humble and gentle man, was always at the ready to assist. We kept the firewood up to Dad till the very end, and never more a loyal friend without these good men I certainly would not have managed. Auntie Pauline, a beautiful soul, was another close to and always caring a Dad. Pauline was the bridemaid at his wedding, and their friendship was lifelong, and I would like to thank her and the ladies and the splendid cooks of the township for arranging a wonderful sweets at today's wake. You better get some because they're amazing food. My father grew fond of Gil Parker, a local logger and entrepreneur who was like a son, and losing him to a Mercy flight helicopter crash in Fiji broke his heart. Indeed, too many of our father's dear friends have unfortunate ends, and our heart goes out to those families and to the McDonald's family at the sad recent passing of Joe, who was taken too soon, just recently. Crop dusters are a unique breed that only the brave will venture, and Dad's partner in the aviation world was the ace, Bob Lansbury, who recently commented to me that it was like a flying circus and he was just the supporting actor. Benny was the main public relations man, the ringmaster of what most people these days wouldn't believe the stories, and most of them are true. He said he only stepped into in when Buckley was hiding from the aviation department, the police or some woman. Another of Dad's closest allies was former policeman and Mayor Dick Ellis. His words are as follows: "I will miss the aged aviator who was a good man of heart, being gifted with a wry sense of humour, a strong sense of fairness and a generosity of spirit. Those gifts, supported by a strong intellect, enabled Ben to give a voice to represent our community of ratepayers on a wide variety of issues, ranging from the parochial to the philosophical. Though often confronted with opposition to his strong views on the matter, Dad supported the libertarian concept of accepting difference and tolerance." Recently, old Dooley Lee turned 90, and the two old boys flew off and under Mary McKillop's bridge. My only regret was that I wasn't there to have filmed it. Lenny Marshall said it didn't matter who you were, whether you were a 16-year-old kid or a politician, or you had the arse out of your pants. If you ever needed advice or to hear an amazing story, Ben was willing. And they were mates for 50 years, and legends will never die. Thanks to Davey and my son Tom for flying the 182 Delta Whiskey uniform today to be here with us. It's parked up over at the hangar. Now finally to my children Tom and Jasmine, who were particularly fond of their Poppy. He was the closest role model and my mainstay. Having raised them as a single mother meant we would not have prospered without my father's help and my guidance, and for that I'm eternally grateful to him. He would fly the kids occasionally to visit their father Tim and referred to this as, with some humour, as the hostage exchange. However, many a time mischief was made with Tom and his pop, and a very special relationship indeed. The following words are from my son Tommy, and it reflects that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Pop Buckley was a real game changer for me, a man I could always depend upon, no matter what the circumstances. One of the more colourful memories was when Ken Conley and I had to make an escape to the Queensland border. Of course, Pop was the obvious pick for a getaway, but as we were taking off in the Cessna 182, the local law enforcement was pulling up to summons Ken. Obviously, we weren't stopping with Benny at the controls, and Pop gave them a smile and a wave, and he hit full throttle, and off we went. We cut in fine that morning. Still to this day, I've never seen such wild grins on two old legends, like little kids running away from their parents. He said, I look forward to having a beer with them both when my time comes. Well, so many stories which we have to share, and together after the service, my siblings and I, will have adventurous stories to tell, and we'd like to thank everyone who could meet our cameraman Jeff. He's wanting to capture your stories, so please do feel free to go up and tell your story. In closing, he was at times hard work, but worked hard. A battler, a fighter, for transparency and civil liberties. A different, rare politician, the type of champion who would champion the common man. Unperturbed by bureaucracy, he survived kangaroo courts, which we mentioned before, and bested the aviation department. A brilliant aviator, a one-of-a-kind father, brother, uncle, and loved grandfather. I speak on behalf of all my extended family when I say he will be sadly missed and irreplaceable. Dad and Tiger Tompkins, who was my godfather, would often say that I was capable of something great. Yet I think that's true of any one of us. It's just important to hear it from people who believe in you so that you can believe it yourself. In parting, I will leave you with these final thoughts that Dad would want you to know. Don't wait till things are perfect to be happy. You'll achieve anything if you work hard enough. Be kind, especially to the meek, the lost and the downtrodden. And remember, the rules are just a rough guide. Chocks away, Dad. Runway 1 is cleared for takeoff. Destination, the promised land. Arrival imminent. Rest in peace, aged aviator. You sure did earn it. Thanks.
We're just about to close. We've made a decision. We're going to load Ben up into the hearse, and then we're going to have a 15-minute or so break here so everybody can get hydrated. For those of you that don't want to go to the cemetery, the family really understand that, or not want, or feel that you need to stay here and find some shade. Could I ask you all to please stand? In an interview with journalist Sue Smethurst from the R.M. Williams magazine, Ben asked how he'd like to be remembered, and his reply was, "They'll probably say I was a silly old bastard, but at least I kept them amused." And my goodness, Ben, you certainly have. Please make your way to the cemetery. Thank you.
On a warm summer's evening, on a train bound for nowhere, I met up with a gambler. We were both too tired to sleep, so we took turns of staring out the window at the darkness till boredom overtook us, and he began to speak. He said, "Son, I've made a life out of reading people's faces and knowing what the cards were by the way they held their eyes. So if you don't mind my saying, I can see you're out of aces. For a taste of your whiskey, I'll give you some advice." So I handed him my bottle, and he drank down my last swallow. Then he bummed a cigarette and asked me for a light. And the night got deathly quiet, and his face lost all expression. Said, if you're gonna play the game, boy, you gotta learn to play it right. You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and know when to run. You never count your money when you're sitting at the table. There'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done. Every gambler knows that the secret to surviving is knowing what to throw away, knowing what to keep. 'Cause every hand's a winner and every hand's a loser, and the best that you can hope for is to die in your sleep. And when he finished speaking, he turned back toward the window, crushed out his cigarette, faded off to sleep. And somewhere in the darkness, the gambler, he broke even. But in his final words, I found an ace that I could keep. You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and know when to run. You never count your money when you're sitting at the table. There'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done. You got to know when to hold 'em, when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and know when to run. You never count your money when you're sitting at the table. There'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done. You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and know when to run. You never count your money when you're sitting at the table. There'll be time enough for counting when the deal is done. On a warm summer's evening, on a train bound for nowhere, I met up with a gambler. We were both too tired to sleep, so we took turns of staring out the window at the darkness till boredom overtook us, and he began to speak. He said, son, I've made a life out of reading people's faces and knowing what the cards were by the way they held their eyes. So if you don't mind my saying,